By the late 1970s, the world of American muscle cars had plunged into a long, dark night. The oil crisis, fuel economy pressures, and the EPA's strict emission standards had clipped the wings of these street beasts. Names that once shook the racing world were now only shadows of their former selves. The 1979 Camaro Z28, once a symbol of speed, was down to just 185 horsepower. The Mustang, America's pride, reluctantly made do with around 140 horsepower. For car enthusiasts, it was a bitter era. Power, sound, and excitement all seemed to have been choked out. But deep in the Arizona desert, a bold idea was taking shape. A family passionate about speed, with two fiery sons, was preparing to find a legal way to beat the system and bring power back to the streets. And they would do it with one of Pontiac's most dazzling icons, the Trans Am. To understand why the macho Trans Am was born, we need to start with the story of the Mechum family, people who were born with gasoline in their veins. At the head of the family was Evan Mechum, a former World War II fighter pilot. Returning from the battlefield with a Purple Heart, he brought with him a soldier's discipline and a passion for speed. In his early 20s, Evan opened a Pontiac and Rambler dealership in Phoenix, Arizona, turning it into a familiar meeting place for local car enthusiasts. His two sons, Kyle and Dennis, grew up surrounded by the smell of gasoline, the roar of exhausts, and stories about the Pontiac GTO and the Super Duty Trans Am. They knew every generation of these cars by heart, every engine upgrade, and they felt the deep disappointment when Pontiac's power was strangled in the late 1970s. To them, a weak Trans Am was like a warrior stripped of its weapons. Kyle and Dennis were not just car guys, they also inherited their father's business sense. Working in the family dealership, they understood how the market worked, knew where the limits of the law were, and more importantly, believed that any limit could be overcome. This combination of passion for speed and commercial insight laid the foundation for a bold plan to create a far more powerful version of the Trans Am that could still be sold legally. They did not yet know that this idea would link their names to one of the most fascinating stories of the post-muscle car era. And soon, the game would no longer simply be about selling cars, it would be about finding a way to beat the entire system that was holding back their power. By the late 1970s, the biggest obstacle for anyone wanting to sell high-performance cars in America was the regulations of the Environmental Protection Agency. For an official dealer like Mechum Pontiac, the law required that every new car sold had to retain its original drivetrain and engine exactly as it left the factory, unless any modifications were EPA certified. This meant that any changes, from swapping the carburetor, to changing the camshaft, to modifying the exhaust, would make the car illegal to sell as new. For Kyle and Dennis, this was a wall of steel. They wanted to restore the Trans Am's power, but any attempt to modify the engine would violate the law if done directly on a new dealership car. Legendary upgrade packages like the Baldwin Motion Specials of the 1960s were now completely impossible under the current legal framework. But this dead end led them to a daring idea. If they could not sell new modified cars, why not sell to themselves first? The plan began with Mechum Pontiac selling brand new stock Trans Ams to another company named Dennis and Kyle Mechum. As soon as DKM purchased the cars, they would register and title them. On paper, these Trans Ams instantly became used cars, even though the odometers still read 0. And this was the key. The strict EPA regulations for new cars no longer applied. At that point, Dennis and Kyle Mechum could freely upgrade the engines, change the exhaust systems, tune the drivetrains, and more without being considered in violation of the law. It was a clever and legal gear change that opened the door for them to create a line of Trans Ams far beyond the standards of the era. The name they chose for this new project carried a bold, provocative tone: Macho Trans Am, a declaration that the era of weak cars was over. In 1977, the first Macho Trans Ams officially came to life. The platform Kyle and Dennis chose was the Trans Am, equipped with the W72/L78 package, the most powerful configuration Pontiac still offered at the time. Under the hood sat the 400 cubic inch Pontiac F8 engine, producing 200 horsepower, paired with a drivetrain more optimized than the standard version. This was the ideal starting point for DKM to unlock the potential that had been held back. The upgrade process began with the intake and ignition systems. The carburetor was tuned to deliver a more precise fuel and air mixture at higher RPMs, allowing the engine to breathe better. The distributor was recalibrated to optimize ignition timing, improving throttle response and overall performance. Next came the exhaust, an area heavily restricted on the stock car. Kyle and Dennis replaced the single Y-pipe setup with a pair of high-performance hooker headers, combined with a true dual exhaust system. Instead of routing all exhaust gases through a single catalytic converter, DKM added a second converter, allowing gases to flow faster and more evenly. They also transformed the Trans Am's purely decorative hood scoop into a fully functional unit that pulled cold air directly into the engine. Colder air is denser and contains more oxygen, which helps fuel burn more efficiently and generates more power. Notably, DKM left the engine internals untouched. The pistons, camshaft, crankshaft, and other components remained stock. This approach preserved reliability while keeping costs reasonable for customers. Yet with only these changes, output increased by about 50 horsepower, bringing the total to 250 horsepower, an impressive figure in the context of 1977. The first Macho Trans Am was not only significantly more powerful than the stock Trans Am, it also retained the dependability needed for daily driving. This was only the beginning, and 1 year later, DKM would deliver a breakthrough that left enthusiasts wide-eyed. In 1978, DKM decided they would make enthusiasts smile from ear to ear. They introduced a new version, bold and highly ambitious, the Turbo Macho Trans Am. The goal was crystal clear: build the most powerful Trans Am possible, one that could match or even surpass some of Europe's most prestigious supercars. The heart of the turbo model was still the Pontiac 400 V8, but this time DKM added a draw-through turbocharger from high-output specialties. Unlike modern fuel-injected systems, the draw-through setup placed the carburetor ahead of the turbo, pulling the entire fuel and air mixture through the compressor wheel. To combat detonation, when boost and temperatures rose, they installed a water injection system, spraying a small amount of water or methanol into the intake charge to cool it down and stabilize combustion. The results were truly impressive. Output jumped to around 330 horsepower, a rare figure in the late 1970s. Placed alongside the Aston Martin 5.8 Vantage or Lamborghini Countach of the era, the Macho Trans Am Turbo could hold its own in terms of raw power. To make the most of this newfound output, DKM offered an optional Doug Nash 5-speed manual gearbox to replace the standard 4-speed. The extra gear not only made acceleration smoother, but also optimized engine speed during highway cruising, keeping the motor in its ideal power band. However, not everyone was ready to embrace this technology. The draw-through turbo system had a reputation for being temperamental and prone to issues if not maintained properly. For those willing to go all in, the reward was a machine that accelerated with raw aggression, packed serious power, and felt completely different from any new car on the American market at the time. Interestingly, the Macho Trans Am was not only built to dominate in a straight line, it was also shaped by DKM to handle corners and deliver a far more balanced driving experience than most muscle cars of that era. Every Macho TA started with Pontiac's WS6 package, already well known for its well-chosen rear gear ratio, precise steering, and improved suspension. Kyle and Dennis did not stop there. They upgraded to Kone-adjustable shocks on all four corners, allowing drivers to set them soft for city cruising or firm for pushing the car hard through high-speed turns. New springs lowered the car's center of gravity, greatly reducing body roll in sharp corners. The wider 8-inch WS6 wheels paired with grippier tires gave the Macho TA the confidence to take bends that an ordinary American muscle car would approach with caution. Driver feel was also refined. Optional Recaro seats hugged the driver to keep them planted, while a Hurst short-throw shifter delivered quick, crisp gear changes. Some customers went further with custom exterior touches, from unique vented hoods to exclusive graphics packages, making each Macho TA a personal statement. Thanks to these upgrades, DKM's Macho Trans Am became one of the rare late 1970s muscle cars that was both quick enough to challenge European supercars and composed enough for the driver to enjoy every curve without losing the raw excitement of the original. With all these enhancements, the Macho Trans Am was unsurprisingly not cheap. In 1979, a standard Trans Am was already close to $6,000 USD, a significant sum at the time. The base Macho TA cost about $3,200 USD more, bringing the total to roughly $9,200 USD. Choosing the turbo model with the Doug Nash 5-speed manual added another $3,000 US, pushing the price past $12,000 US, on par with, or even above, a new Corvette. At first glance, spending that kind of money on a Trans Am instead of a Corvette might seem unusual. Yet for those who experienced it, the price was fully justified. The Macho TA was not only more powerful than the Corvette L82, which had about 225 horsepower, it was also nearly a full second quicker over the quarter mile. The regular Macho TA could run in the low 14s, while the turbo model, when running smoothly, could move deep into European supercar performance territory. The key point was that the Macho TA did not sacrifice practicality for speed. It still offered a roomy interior, a usable trunk, and the ability to be driven daily, something many European supercars of the time could not match. Its exclusivity added even more value, with only a few hundred built and each one customizable to the buyer's preference. Overall, the Macho Trans Am was a complete performance package, fast, rare, practical, and most importantly, carrying the rebellious spirit that dared to challenge the rules of its time. In its 3 years of existence, the Macho Trans Am left a distinct mark, yet its production numbers show that it was always a specialty reserved for a select few. From 1978 to 1980, only about 325 Macho TAs were built. Among them, the turbo version with the Doug Nash 5-speed manual gearbox, the pinnacle of DKM's performance, appeared in fewer than 20 cars. Each one carried the personal touch of its owner, from paint schemes and graphics to interior configurations. ensuring that no two were exactly alike. However, by 1980, the situation changed. Pontiac decided to discontinue the 400 engine, the heart of the Macho TA, and replace it with the 301. The 301 was lighter and more fuel-efficient, but it had less potential for power. The modifications that DKM applied to the 400 could not deliver the same gains on the 301. This meant the Macho TA would lose its primary advantage, which was its superior performance. Faced with this reality, Kyle and Dennis decided to end production of the Macho Trans Am in 1980. They shifted focus to the third-generation Firebird, creating Motorsport Edition versions that emphasized handling and precise driving feel. These cars were still faster and sharper than the standard models, but they lacked the wild character and rebellious edge of the Macho TA, the traits that had defined the DKM brand. Even so, the legacy of the Macho Trans Am was not measured in production numbers or sales, but in the spirit it represented. During a time when American muscle cars were being strangled by emissions laws and fuel economy pressures, the Macho TA proved there was still room for cars that were powerful, bold, and full of character. It inspired many other legal loophole performance projects, reminding enthusiasts that passion is not easily extinguished. Today, original Macho TAs are sought after by collectors. Their rarity, with only a few hundred ever produced, combined with the unique story behind them, has driven their collectible value significantly higher. Whenever one appears at a classic car event, the Macho TA draws attention not just for its aggressive looks, but also for the story it tells about a time when Americans had to be creative to keep the spirit of speed alive. More than 4 decades later, the name Macho Trans Am still resonates as a reminder that sometimes, to create a legend, you must be willing to step off the beaten path and challenge the limits that have been set. The Macho Trans Am was not just a car, it was a story of creativity, passion, and the courage to challenge the rules. In a time when American muscle cars seemed to be dead, Kyle and Dennis Mechum found a legal way to return power, speed, and personality to those who craved them. It was a car that could match the performance of European supercars, yet still held on to its American nature. Big, powerful, and highly practical. What do you think about the Macho Trans Am and this legendary loophole? Leave a comment, hit like if you enjoy unique car stories, share the video with friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next journeys.